Now, Billy, you've been into hidden technologies, I think, since back in 1977. Can you just tell us how you got started in that?
Yeah, sure. Well, in 1977, I was living in Miami, Florida, in a city called Opelika, and we lived close to a private airport. And so I would go outside and watch the the airplanes go over because there was not much to do back then. You know, this is pre-internet, pre-cell phones, pre-everything. And so I was out there one day and I saw an object pass over my backyard that cleared the horizon in seconds, not minutes. And it also didn't have a fuselage, it didn't have a tail fin, didn't have a cockpit, wings, landing gear. Usually from the height, you know, the distance from the airport, by the time I got to my backyard, the landing gear was still down. Some cases they were getting ready to head up into the, didn't have any of that. And so it really baffled me. And it moved across the horizon in seconds. And it came back and then it stopped silently and it just took off the way it came in. And I was like, what in the world did I just see? So I started researching aerospace. I went to the library, the good old-fashioned library, and got all the encyclopedias on aerospace technology and started researching aerospace technologies from the 70s. And, you know, everything from delta wing, swept wing, you know, got into supersonic, transport like the SST. And I couldn't, ballistic missiles, I did it all. And I couldn't find anything that I saw, but it drew me into this whole new, you know, study and research of different black budget projects, unacknowledged projects, you know, things like that DARPA's got going on and so forth. And it just really kind of shaped my whole life part, you know, my whole life path, really. Kind of weird.
So have you seen any other UFOs since that time?
Yes, I have actually. So in 2018, I was in Washington State at a place called ECETI Ranch, E-C-T-I, ECETI Ranch, E-C-E-T-I. And it was actually a workshop, a conference I was doing, a one-week conference. People come there from all around the world. I didn't even know this until I got there, from all around the world to come in. You go in at the base of Mount Shasta and look up at night. And every night you could see UFOs, and we saw probably 13 UFOs during the time that I was there. And we had the satellite trackers on, tracked satellites, tracking the ISS locations above our heads, and also tracking air flight. And these objects didn't match any of those.
Wow. You know, you're a man of a great wealth of knowledge, and you have a very wide range of knowledge, because I've listened to some of your interviews, and
thank you.
I mean, it's very, very vast and deep. So I guess I just want to ask you, based on the answer, do you think that they were actually alien craft, or do you think it was maybe some advanced form of man-made technology?
That's actually a very good question. Now, from what I've been researching now for the last, 4 decades, it seems like there's a good mix of what I would consider alien craft, and then another mix of what I would consider our man-made ARV, or alien reproduction vehicles, some like to call them, where we've actually been able to obtain some of these downed crafts, which we probably most likely downed them ourselves using scalar technology that we've had since the 1930s, actually. I think it was an experiment to bring some down. Even at Roswell, 1947, 2 UFOs came down that day, not 1, 2. And I think it was directed scalar weapons that just happened to work. They happened to scramble their navigation systems, and they crashed. And then we took advantage of that. And I think a lot of technology has come out of that. Everything from Velcro, fiber optics, microchips, all of that has come out of the Roswell crash. And so, keeping that in mind, think of all the advanced craft that we've been able to create, like the TR-3B in the Aurora project. In other words, another black budget, unacknowledged project. But we have the flying triangles that have a similar rotating fluid vortex underneath that's electrified to create anti-gravity, along with thrusters. So a lot of this technology that we see in the skies is possibly our own, and they are posing as UFOs. So there's a mix of both UFOs and our own technology.
I have 2 questions about that. The first one would be, these crashes happened in Roswell, so the United States government would have confiscated those crafts, maybe back engineered them. But what about the Germans? Because the Germans during World War II had this really advanced technology, and that Project Paperclip actually brought their scientists over. So how did the Germans get this technology?
The Germans, Hitler was obsessed with ancient cuneiform tablets, Sumerian tablets, Tibetan records, Tibetan knowledge, Tibetan Book of the Dead, a lot of the Mahabharata texts and the Bhagavad Gita texts. And he sent his scouts all over the world collecting and receiving information about all these texts, sitting with indigenous elders, trying to track down the location of an ancient root race. And he finally got directed from Tibet to Antarctica, where he actually did go down and discover this root race down there. And this root race had been living there for a very, very long time, and had been here since the time of the Anunnaki or the Atlanteans, or whatever you want to call them. And people believe that they're still there right now. As a matter of fact, the location that he was in, there's bases all over around that opening in the earth down there. And you can look at it, look it up on Google Earth.
Are you talking about Antarctica?
Antarctica, correct? Yes, there's bases down there. You can't have war. You can't. There can be no fighting each other. It's a research area now, and all the major countries in the world are down there, including the Rockefeller Foundation has their own research base as well, right next to the opening. But what's interesting is he went down there and he got somehow worked out some type of a deal with these people, and the whole thing about the Aryan race that he was trying to propagate had nothing to do with specifically him, trying to create a world of blonde-haired, blue-eyed people through regular genetics, because he himself didn't have blonde hair and blue eyes. Right. It was the people that he ran into down there. They had blonde hair and blue eyes, and they had, and according to different accounts, and it could be some speculative hearsay, but they wanted to have him win this war, take global domination, and then pull them out and let them regain their power on the planet as this Aryan race. And he, in return, he would have certain powers and certain levels of, I guess, rulership or whatever. And so that was the whole thing behind it. It had nothing really to do with him creating this, where everybody who had blonde hair and blue eyes was a special human being. It had something to do with this Aryan race that he had bumped into down there. They had given him the technology or the instructions on how to build these Hanabu craft. He built the Hanabu crafts. He actually had Hanabu 1, 2, 3, and 4. Hanabu 4 was rumored to even have left Earth's atmosphere and even taken a trip to the moon and to Mars, as well as him and I think the SS rep was Hans Clymer. They actually both got on that supposedly and even maybe escaped death. The fact that he may have died there might even be a lie.
Was that in the 1930s? Was that in the 1930s you're talking about?
No, the Hanabu 4 would have been right at the end of the war. Yes, it's 19.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but if the Germans did have this advanced technology, why in fact did they lose the war? Did it just come too late?
Yeah, well, it came too late. There wasn't enough. Once the U.S. realized that they had this, because Admiral Byrd went down to Antarctica to see what the heck was going on with a fleet of Navy ships, and they got sent packing with their tail between their legs. Like these Hanabu craft and these Foo Fighters, whatever they had, came out and started attacking, blowing up ships, killing American veterans. At that time they were active military, Navymen. And then Admiral Byrd made the famous statement that we're facing a new type of enemy that can fly from pole to pole. And so when he came back and he debriefed everybody, they realized we got to act now. We got to stop this guy now. So they took affirmative action. They went in immediately and started doing some heavy bombing. And they really destroyed a lot of the factories, facilities, the laboratories, the places where they were making or working on these experimental projects and so forth. They were able to sneak in and steal about 2,000 of the employees that they had hired to work on these different projects within espionage, the aerospace tech, and other different types of technology as well. All the scientists and some of the actual government agents, they were able to take them over in Project Paperclip. It was over 2,000 people they took. It wasn't just like a handful of people. And so they really short-circuited the whole thing very quickly and rapidly, and kind of really stole all the research. So it was actually a brilliant move.
You're saying the United States did that to the Germans?
The United States did that to the Germans. Yeah, they took a preemptive. They went in hardcore, fast, and they came away. I mean, obviously, it was a brilliant plan the way they did it. They actually went in and were able to cripple him before he can create a massive amount or a fleet of these craft. Because if he had a fleet of them, a full fleet, we'd be in trouble.
I mean, I could talk to you for 10 hours. Because that leads me to 12 other questions.
Yeah.
And one of the questions I guess I'll just ask, just popped into my mind, is did the Soviets also get some of that technology?
There was rumored that the Soviets also had captured some scientists from the whole German, Reich, but they didn't have like the main key figures. And they did start a lot of black budget, undercover, unacknowledged experimental projects in their country as well, and still have them, of course, running until this very day. But the United States was able to capitalize and take the key figures.
Have you heard of, I'm sure you're familiar with David Wilcock.
Yeah.
He talks a lot about Russian science.
Mm-hmm.
And in your opinion, is their science valid? I mean, because according to Wilcock, they're have been making tremendous breakthroughs in the last 20 or 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about Russian science? Because it's not really talked about around the United States.
Yeah, right. Well, they have a way of experimenting with spiritual and esoteric science combined with quantum physics and quantum mechanics. So they've been experimenting with things like pyramid structures, and they have several pyramids there that they built, new modern pyramids, not ancient, where they would do crops inside the pyramid structure and then crops on the outside of the pyramid structure. And they've been able to realize that the crops inside the pyramid structure, getting the same exact treatment as the ones on the outside, grew 3 times faster or 3 times more abundant when you're inside of that pyramidal type of a structure, that tetrahedron structure. And then they've been doing frequency experiments. They've been actually using frequencies to actually alter and rewrite DNA through frequency, and also even alter genetics through frequencies. So they've been working on this frequency healing technology as well. So they're into a lot of that combination of spiritual science and esoteric science with real quantum physics and cymatics, and they're making some headway and some breakthroughs.
You mentioned Tibet before. Do you know what Tibetan acoustic levitation is?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They would make these chants, and they would lift giant boulders, up to sides of mountains and to different levels and stuff. It's amazing stuff.
Do you think that's how the pyramids were built, the Great Pyramids?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The Great Pyramids were definitely built with some type of anti-gravity force, because when you go there, if you take a compass, when you get near to some of the stones, you'll see the arrow start to spin. And so it's pretty interesting, because that means that the atomic structure had been reversed, or the spin rate of those atoms had been reversed. And so if it was a spin down, then they change it to a spin up. And so they're able to, alter the magnetic field in the atoms and by the atomic structure, and create a much lighter brick. And so they can easily move it and manipulate it to where they wanted it to go.
What do you think is causing magnetism at the North Pole? Do you have any take on that?
Well, we have the magnetism is actually caused by the spinning core of the Earth. That the Earth is not completely hollow. There is still a steel, an iron ball, a ferrofluid core that's spinning. And at the rate of its spin, it's generating a gyro, which is creating electromagnetism, which is then spewing out of the planet in different areas. And ironically, if you look in the ancient maps of temples and pyramids, you'll find in every area where there's a electromagnetic force coming out of the earth, there's temples and so forth in those locations. So they were able to read these fields and sense them as well. But that's what's coming out of the earth. It's the electromagnetic fields. Now, the magnetic field of the earth is warping and bending in some weird kind of ways right now. There's something altering the field itself and creating these gaping wide, even openings at times, which is kind of strange, and which people say that astrophysicists say that it could be that there's a huge mass out there that is causing this warping and bending of the electromagnetic field around the planet Earth itself. So it's pretty interesting.
Are you talking about like a planet like Planet X, Nibiru, something like that?
Yeah, they found a few of them. They found one they've labeled Planet 9. They won't call it Planet X. And they found another one they've named Biden, believe it or not.
Biden, okay.
Yeah, it's there's a planet orbiting a brown dwarf that's orbiting our sun every 4,200 years. That's now in actual, astrophysics books, and you go to college, you got to learn that now. It's actually been added. So there's stuff out there. There's a brown dwarf in our solar system orbiting our sun that has the same mass as our sun, but is almost like 2/3 less the size. And so that can also cause that as well. Even magnetic north on Earth is moving. So magnetic north used to face true north, and now due to some natural geological situation that's happening within our solar system and our planet, it's moved. And actually now true north, magnetic north, has now been faced a little bit now west of Russia. And so a lot of the airports, even in America, have had to reconfigure the coordinates for landing on the runway so that the planes can actually navigate to the right runway and land, just because of that.
Didn't Zachariah Sitchin talk about that kind of, that
Oh, yeah.
brown dwarf, that second, I don't know if they call it a second sun or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we live in a binary solar system, and so he had been talking about this Planet X. You know, he never specifically called it a sun, but he did call it a planet. There was another planet that was in a very elliptical orbit, a very strange elliptical orbit around our star. What I discovered through my research is that it's actually a planet orbiting a brown dwarf, and this brown dwarf star is actually in an elliptical orbit around our sun, and the planet is orbiting that brown dwarf, and there's actually 6 of them orbiting that brown dwarf. So the astrophysicist on Fox News actually said exactly what I've been saying for the last 10 years. He said there is a solar system in our solar system. Those are his exact words.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What about the moon? Because our moon is quite an anomaly. What is your opinion on the moon? Is it hollow? Is it a base? Was it towed in to orbit by aliens eons ago? What is your opinion?
The moon is an interesting thing. So if you go into the Enuma Elish and the 7 tablets of creation, which is an ancient Sumerian cuneiform Babylonian and Akkadian epic of the creation of our solar system, you discover that there was a planet named Tiamat. And this planet named Tiamat was a water-bearing world with solid land, 4 to 6 times larger than Earth. It was said that when the sun gleamed off of it, it was so beautiful it rivaled the own sun's glory. Earth didn't exist at this time, and so how the people knew this is ancient handed-down histories. But the planet, according to the Enuma Elish, exploded. It's not clear if this was a war or if it's an esoteric meaning, as if it was just a collision with another spatial body. But the planet exploded and it turned into the asteroid belt. So the asteroid belt is actually an exploded planet. That's what it is. Now, a huge chunk of it broke off and swung away with all that water, all that biological life on it, and recoalesced as planet Earth. And along with it, it tugged Lamu, which is the moon. It tugged the moon along with it. And much later, the Atlantean people who had risen to a super high level of advanced technology, they hollowed out a lot of that moon, created a substructure underneath the moon, put it into a geosynchronous orbit to keep one side away from Earth, put bases on what we call the dark side of the moon. And we know this because of the Clementine missions from the military that sent Black Budget satellite up to the moon, and now it's been declassified. A lot of stuff was on the backside of the moon. Even the satellite itself never returned. It crashed into something that was above the moon's surface and never returned. But I think they knew that was going to happen, because that's why they named it Clementine, because there's a song, "Oh, my darling Clementine, you were lost and gone forever." So they knew exactly what they were doing. But the moon itself, if you look at the radar imaging that came from Arecibo before the Arecibo broke, thank goodness we had this imagery. You look at the moon from the radar images, there's ground penetrating radar images available on usgs.gov. You can see about 30 meters below the moon's surface. And what you see with the naked eye, with no image editing, with no enhancements, with no contrast changing, you can see substructure, what appear to be gigantic beings beneath the surface. And this is right on, hiding in plain sight. Anybody can download these images from the government website. They're not even hiding it. And so there definitely is something underneath the surface of the moon. And that is why all of those craters, they all end at a specific depth. And the thing that's strange about them is that there's nothing coming in. Nothing hit the moon on an angle and created a skid mark to it and then a crater. And most of the craters don't have enough ejecta around the edges to justify them even being a crater. So a lot of those craters, I think, are just artificial.
Okay. Again, I have about 20 questions I could ask you based on this. You talked about the giants, and I've seen images on Google of these giants on Earth.
Yeah.
Are these actually terrestrial beings, or are they alien beings?
That's a good question. So if you look into a lot of the Sumerian tablets, you find that the heroes of old, the original pantheon, which is a Sumerian pantheon, and pantheon means family bloodline or bloodline family. That's what pantheon actually means. It was the Sumerian people who wrote down that these people arrived here on this planet And we're talking about, Enki and Lil, Anu, then Hersag, Ishtar, and all these others that arrived here. They came with their own. They were the original pantheon. These heroes of old, as they call them also savants. They were big people. They were much larger than the Homo sapien. And then as time grew on, as they began to mate and have more children, offspring, the offspring started normalizing, not as small as a human being, but normalizing an average height. Just like if we went to Mars right now, we would be considered giants, because from what I've seen on Mars, the life forms that appear to be there from just some of the images appear to be very low to the ground and very small. If we had kids there, our kids, the first generation would be extremely strong like us, because on Mars you can pick up a boulder and throw it because you grew up under Earth's gravity. But by the second generation and third generation, they'd be very weak. So that's what happened here on Earth with the Anunnaki. And even they themselves have become weaker due to this gravitational field. They call it the net that we have around the planet. And when they began to mate with human women, they still gave birth to the Nephilim, which were giants. So that remnant DNA of that genetic combination still created these, what we call, quote unquote, giants, which were probably 8 to 10 feet tall people, which, at that time were considered to be huge, giant people, very strong people. But prior to that, when there was a full blood offspring without the mating with humans, some of these beings have been recorded as being as much as 15, 20, even 30 feet tall in some cases. In the Bible, they're called the Anak instead of the Anunnaki. And the Anak in the Bible, it says that we were like grasshoppers in their eyes. So the Anunnaki are even recorded in the Bible. Even the characters from the Enuma Elish, Marduk and so forth, they're even in the Bible and the Torah as well.
Okay, that was quite an explanation. I never heard really. I've always wondered why, like, the Anunnaki or the giants, when they came here, what happened to decrease their height, and why their powers decline. That's a good explanation.
Yeah.
I could go two divergent ways here. I wanted to talk about our history as humanity, but let me just maybe jump back to the moon for a second.
Yeah.
My question about the moon is, we went to the moon in 1969, and in the early 70s. Some people believe we didn't go to the moon.
Yeah.
What is your take on that? Did we go to the moon, and why haven't we been back in almost 50 years? And were we chased off the moon? Were we told not to come back? Or does the U.S. have some type of secret space program that they've been going to the moon for a long time? What's going on with all that?
Well, we went to the moon and we lied about it. So, yes, we did go to the moon, but yes, we lied about it, meaning we did go to the moon after sending the Mercury missions, after sending several other missions that did lunar orbits. We discovered that there were some significant anomalies on the moon that we needed to get our hands on. And we needed to send people up there to grab these things and judge which ones to bring back and which ones not to bring back. And so the moon was not just about going up there to get some rocks. It was about going up there to acquire and bring back remnants of what looked like to be advanced technology or an ancient civilization. And so to do this, you have to do both sides. One side is you send the people. The other side is you broadcast some real footage and you broadcast some fake footage. The average person, especially that time in that era of TV with technology, nobody can really even tell the difference. It was very easy to fool somebody from that time period anyway. I mean, we've gone light years ahead in technology, nowadays. But at that time, it was very easy to make the similarities. And so you broadcast part real, part fake. You show what appears to be a barren landscape, when in true reality, there's a lot of stuff on the moon. And China proved this when they sent the rover to the moon a few years ago. The rover got stuck in a lot of debris, and the debris was broadcast back, and the photos are right available on their space agency website. I'm talking about debris that looks like pieces of broken steel and broken bits of machinery or whatever. And the rover got jammed and stuck up in it. It can't even get out. So it's up there. There's a lot of stuff up there. So they were on a reconnaissance mission to bring back remnants of something, is what it was. Now, people say, oh, you can't get through the Van Allen radiation belt. False. That's a whole nother, fake news story. The Van Allen, scientist named Van Allen, worked for NASA. He was researching the radiation belts during the Mercury missions, had discovered that they were there. He didn't call him Van Allen. Of course, it was named after him much later. But he discovered the radiation belts, told NASA about it, and NASA said, oh, we got to investigate it. They started researching, oh, yeah, there is a radiation belt up there. Through their research, they discovered that two things. One thing is you would have to be exposed. Remember, they were sending animals into space. So was Russia. You'd have to be exposed in a vessel that was not radiation hardened, didn't have radiation shields for 3 months before you received the lethal dose in the radiation belt to die. It only takes a day to get through it when you go into the moon. The second thing is that there are, because of our magnetic fields, it whips through the Earth and comes out into space, and it creates these pathways that open up, these doorways that open up, and they're very predictable. So NASA and the actual trajectory through the radiation belt is available online, general public information. And so they launched a trajectory through the radiation belt in one of those magnetic openings that comes every so many days, and they just flew right through it with no problems, no issues. The second thing is they show this moon boot that doesn't have any boot print at the bottom, but they show a boot print on the moon. Again, that's false news, and another person who got a lot of likes and spread a lot of lies. If you look up the actual footage, or go like I did to the actual space agency off the Space Coast of Florida, you'll see that there is a slip-on shoe that goes over that smooth bottom. When you're on the rocket and you're in the actual the craft, you don't want to walk around with inside of there with 20-pound boots. There's a overshoe. It's called an overshoe, and I have the scan in a blog that I wrote about this of the overshoe. I have a video of the astronaut actually putting on the overshoe in the 1960s and testing it out and walking around it and everything else. It's a Velcro overshoe that goes over that slip boot. So yes, they did have the right boots, and then yes, those boot prints did make boot prints on the moon. And there's also a couple of images that they show where it looks like they're standing on the moon with no helmet on. And they're going, you see, they're in the studio. Actually, that was the back of the facility in Florida, off the Florida Space Coast, and somebody took it and moon rocked it, chopped it, and then put it out as an image. I have the original image in my blog in full color, showing that they're in the back of the research facility doing a practice walk. So there's a lot of fake information that has gone out, and unfortunately, because people don't have the time to do the right kind of research, in the conscious community, what we've done is we've taken false news and we've run away with it, just like listening to it's just the same as listening to somebody give you some gossip and you run away with it without researching or learning anything about it, unfortunately. But yes, we went to the moon, but yes, we also lied about it, and we brought back some interesting things from the moon, and they've gone back. Now, why we haven't gone back a lot? Well, we don't know that, because we have shuttles that still take off. We have the X-33Bs that are military shuttles that go up into space and come back every 2 years. They launch and they land, and they're documented for launching, documented for landing, but not told where they're going and why. We also have the black box audio from the Apollo 11, and the black box audio through the Freedom of Information Act. You can actually hear their astronauts saying, I think it's Neil that says, look at those domes down there. I bet the people in there never get out. And that's in one of the documentaries that I'm in. So there's people, according to these astronauts, that are living on the moon. And when they got to the dark side of the moon in Apollo 10, they were doing an orbit around the moon as a test before 11. Their comms were off on the backside, which is normal. But when their comms went down, somebody else logged into their comms and broadcast some very strange music on all the comms on the dark side of the moon. It was almost like singing. And they've never been able to identify the location, but they said it was coming from the moon itself. So there's a lot of activity going on up there, man. It's an incredible place. Incredible place. And I think they could be in collusion or in communication with these peoples, and maybe we were told after we dropped a bomb on the moon, trying to, I don't know why we did it. We dropped the bomb on the moon. They probably said, look, you guys can't do this no more. You guys got to stay away from here.
So do you think that, the Apollo craft, that it looks like such outdated technology, did we go to the moon in that, or did we go to the moon in some other vehicle which they didn't want to show us? What do you think? Oh,
no, we went to the moon in Apollo. We had the Apollo, we had the LIM, we had the lunar module, we had all of that. That was real. That's simple. I mean, it's not that hard to get to the moon, to be honest with you. If you have the right rocket, you can achieve 33 times the speed of sound. You can get through max Q with maneuvering thrusters so that you don't lose your trajectory, and then you can get out into space, because that's what it's required, 33 times the speed of sound. That's what the whole thing is behind the 33rd degree Mason, is getting into space, is space travel. And then once you do that, you're just on a pre-calculated course directed to the moon. It's this piece of cake. And then you separate from the LIM, You descend. It's not, it's very reduced gravity, easy to navigate with thrusters. It's not that hard to do, actually. It's getting to the moon is actually pretty easy.
So are we still going to the moon, or not?
I think that they probably could be going on covert missions to the moon. I think that we're in communication with the people on the moon because we did drop laser satellite communications array up there, which is documented. That's not public. That's not like top secret. That's knowledge. And then, but we're transmitting every few days from Earth to the moon. We're transmitting information on laser to those that laser satellite array. Why are we doing that? I mean, why are we sending information and data to the moon? There's a communication going on, most likely a two-way communication. So I think that there's still something going on with the moon, and I can't say for sure if we are going there or not, but I would think it's highly likely that we're at least in communication with somebody on the moon.
Okay. I've heard people like David Icke say that the secret governments of the world have technology that's 40 years advanced of what the general public knows.
Yeah.
What is your take on that?
Ooh, that's a low number now. He used to be right, but it's actually increased significantly. So I've been given top secret clearance in private space through my space agency, First Class Space, down here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And you attend the space symposium, you're sitting there with the big brass, you're sitting there with all these big, corporate CEOs from these space agencies. And you find out that we're more now 300 years ahead of the general population. 300. Whatever you could think of, it's already been done. Already been done. And I'm talking about whatever you can think of.
So that would usher in, in 300 years, that would usher in the golden age that you say that we're heading into now.
Yes.
Why are they withholding this technology? Do they not want us to be in the golden age?
Yeah, they don't want that. The powers that be, they truly feel, I'm talking about the elite of the elite, the true hegemonic oligarchs that run the planet, the 5 people, and with the, that descend down into 100 families. They literally have stated out of their own mouths that they feel that they have the right to rule over humans. They don't even call us people, they call us humans. And they believe that they're direct lineage to these Atlantean Anunnaki people that were here in ancient times. And they feel that they have the right to rule over us and dominate us. And it's been bred into them so deep genetically that they'd rather rule a planet of darkness than a planet of light. And it's only going to come down to when enough people become conscious and stop participating in their systems, their global system, is that we'll be able to overthrow that system and create our new one and really head more rapidly into a golden age. And all these technologies will be released to the public.
Are these 5 people that you talk about, are they hybrids, or are they full-out humans, or just full-out kind of alien beings?
They're full-out humans with bloodline lineages to some of the previous Anunnaki rulers or elites that used to run the planet in ancient times. Tied to the Sumerian kings list that's in the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, England.
Okay. I want to go now to the history of humanity. How far back do we have to go to see the first humans? Not a humanoid, but the first humans like we are today.
Yeah, 200,000 years. You go back 200,000 years, the first Homo sapiens sapien arrives, and that's the Adamu, Adamau, Adamu, and that means first man. And so there's a famous cylinder scroll with the Anunnaki woman holding up the first Adamu because she gave birth to it. Are we creations? Because I have this book here. Maybe you've probably heard of it, Slave Species of God by Michael Tellinger. Yeah, I've got it.
It talks about how the Anunnaki kind of fashioned men from humanoids using DNA.
Yeah.
Is that how it came about? Do you agree with that?
That's exactly what the tablets talk about. So they started off creating clones, believe it or not. They were already a hominid on the planet, and they needed a workforce to do the work because they were tired of doing the work themselves. They even almost went to war against each other because of their workload. They were like, well, we got to fix this problem. So they said, well, we'll take the hominid here and we'll add our essence to it, our DNA. We'll genetically modify it, so to speak. So they took a couple of them, they started cloning them after they genetically modified them to be laborers. And they couldn't create enough clones fast enough. And the problem was, well, let's get them to mate. Well, they couldn't mate. They were not able to mate. Like if you have a lion and a tiger, they'll make a ligan, but the ligan is sterile. So that was what was happening. So they realized they had to actually create something that could mate and create its own offspring so they can, because there was only a few of them here. It wasn't a lot of Anunnaki here. Okay, I think at the height, it might have been 500 total. So they were like, okay, we gotta do this. So they took the hominid, they took the egg out of the womb of a hominid, and they added some their genetic material to the egg, creating what we call now in modern times a zygote. Inserted that into Isis, inserted that into her womb, and she then took the baby to term for 10 months and gave birth to the first man called the Adamu. And that's what Genesis is all about. Genesis is the generations of Isis. Genesis. It's the generations of Isis.
Okay. So you said, I believe in an interview, I've heard you say that the Anunnaki is really just kind of like a general term for a variety of alien species that have been visiting Earth. So was humanity, was man created from just one of them, or was it several that had a play in it?
Well, what's interesting is it seems at the time that these Anunnaki, Atlantean version of the Anunnaki people, that particular race came, they're the ones who genetically modified us and spread us around the planet. Now, what's interesting is these Anunnaki were multiracial. They weren't just one race. Some people will try to tell you that they were all white, they were all black. No. They were multiracial. They were various different races, even various different colors. There were even some blue and some green ones. Now, what's interesting is when you look into the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, which I talk about in my book, when they spread people around the planet, and Thoth tells his crew to spread out and duplicate what they had did in the land of Chem, which in other words, they were rebuilding Chem from the flood, bring back everybody to a high civilization. These particular people that went out, spread out around the planet, were various different races of these Atlantean, and so they branded the people they ruled over. So if you were in Asia, you were branded Asian. That's why you look like this. If you look like your god. If you were in India, you were branded Indian. You look like your god. If you were in the North and South Americas, you were branded to look like that. Like your god looked like a Mayan or an indigenous native. So this is what was happening. So it was a genetic branding. Now, in science and genetics, we discovered that there was a 2% variance between a Caucasian and an African American, or an African, I should say, really, and an Asian and so forth. And so that variance would take millions of years of evolution to occur naturally. So scientists have now come to the conclusion that this was done purposefully, but they can't figure out how or who did it. But the 2% variance to make me a black, I'm not black because my ancestors were in the sun. That's actually a farce. It's actually really bad fake news. And you're not Caucasian because your ancestors were hanging out in the mountains, okay? That's just a bunch of junk. That's garbage. The real thing is there's a genetic difference, a 2% genetic difference, making us the same species, but a variation of the same species. Just like you can have variations of rooster or variations of dogs and so forth. So it's the same exact thing here. But we were genetically branded this way. And to the people that ruled over us, we would look up to them as our God.
I agree with you on that, by the way.
Yeah.
I agree with a lot of what you say. Well, you have very extensive knowledge. From all the people I've interviewed, you give the most detailed, in-depth answers, and because I know you've been doing it since 1977.
It's been a long time, man. I mean, and I got over 1,000 books here in my house. I've gone through all these books and scriptures, Cylinder Scrolls, tablets, papyruses, you name it.
Now, I know that you don't just talk the talk, you walk the walk. So you've put up your own money, and you're a successful business person. And I know that you started going into business when you were 12 years old. Yeah. But you've created an empire where you have this money, and you use your own money to travel to all of these ancient sites.
Yep.
So when did you start traveling? What year?
I started traveling 25 years ago. And so I guess that would be, are we in 2020 now? 2005 or something like that. The first trip I took was because my youngest son is 21. And so, so this would have been actually 2000. So in 2000 was the year. 2000 was the year, actually. Wow. Okay, so it's a little bit short. So 21 years ago. I went to Teotihuacan. I went to Chichen Itza. I went to the Yucatan Peninsula. I wanted to go somewhere where it wasn't too far away. I can get to some ancient sites that have real relevance. I could study them, and I didn't have to break my bank, and I can get back to Florida pretty easily. It's a 3-hour flight there, and it was really, fairly inexpensive in Mexico. I think back then when I went over there with like $500 and they changed that money into Mexican pesos, I thought I was a millionaire. So it was pretty cool. And so that was my first foray into going out to feel like real field research, like leaving the country, So it was pretty amazing.
So let's say in the beginning, in the first few years, you go to a site like that in Mexico. Yeah. What are you looking to do there? What do you do at these sites?
Well, the first thing is you want to see it with your own eyes, because all you have is pictures and books. The internet was in its beginning stages, so it wasn't like you can just go on Google and type. Google didn't even exist at that time. There's no Google. It was AOL dial-up, and you had the AOL search, and there was very few images on that. So it was all about books that you would read, and you would see pictures, or you would see it on TV and documentaries. So the first thing is to get the visualization, like to get the reality in my own mind, like this stuff is really here. Touch it, smell it, feel it. Then the next thing is to analyze it, like look at it really closely. Is it true that you can't put a human hair in between these bricks? Check it out for myself. Can I put this paper in my hand? Can I put this tour guide paper in between? I can't do it. Looking at them, having things with me like, simple things like a compass, a small ruler, because you couldn't use cell phone apps didn't exist yet back then, so you had to have actual little things in your hand, in your backpack, and just analyzing it, just trying to get an understanding for myself, from my own perspective, as to what in the world could have gone on here, finding out what's underneath them, talking to indigenous peoples there who had been growing up in the area, what have they been told since they were growing up, talking to the archaeologists there, and really finding out my own hypothesis was right, that underneath these temples and underneath these pyramids were other structures in most cases that were built in even deeper ancient times. And, so it's just an incredible thing to get the history, even finding out that the Mayans didn't build any of it. The Mayans built nothing. They built zero. They inherited everything that was already there. On TV, they would have you think that the Mayans built pyramids. The Mayans didn't build any pyramids. They got there and inherited them. The Aztecs built nothing. They got there and it was already there for them. They inherited it after leaving a volcanic valley. A volcano erupted in their valley, and they had to leave. They had to evacuate, and they stumbled upon Teotihuacan. That was like another 80 to 100 something years after the Mayans, disappeared. So the true story starts to pop out when you go to these places in person, and that's why it's like, wow, now I realize I have to keep going in person to these places. If I want to get all the real information, I can't rely just on books and TV.
Okay, two questions. Do you still go, and which site have you gone to that causes the most shocking reaction from you, that was the most surprising?
Yeah, I still go. I'm still going. I'm actually leaving Thursday. I'm headed to Athens, Greece, to document all those ancient temples and the Parthenon and everything else. I'm making some documentaries, some travel footage for my TV network there. And then I'm headed to Egypt after that for about 3 weeks. And I'm going to be going everywhere you could think of in Egypt and Cairo. But I would say still, it's the Great Pyramid for me. I mean, I've been to a lot of places. I've been around the world 3 times. But the Great Pyramid, there's so much knowledge and wisdom encoded into the Great Pyramid, so many hidden things encoded into that pyramid. I just did a workshop with Robert Edward Grant, and we revealed some stuff to the world for the very first time on my workshop, my Zoom workshop that I did a month ago, showing some hidden glyphs that had never been seen before inside of the King's Chamber, that were in complete alignment with Da Vinci's painting of the Final Supper, the Last Supper. Also Omega and everything else being etched into the stone box in there that had never been seen before. Nobody ever found it until he found it. So it's pretty amazing. And then understanding that entire Giza Plateau is actually an ancient star map leading to the orbits and rotations and the astronomical units of every planet in our solar system, from Earth, from the Sun, Earth, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars. And in perfect alignment with NASA's inner solar system planet photos as well, which I show in my documentaries and stuff. So it's pretty cool stuff. It's just an amazing feat of intelligence. The Great Pyramid seems to be a multifunctional stone computer, a communications device, a portal generator, and a wireless electricity generator as well.
Yeah, I've heard you say that under, I believe, is the paw of the Sphinx is a spacecraft? Is that,
yeah.
Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah. According to the Emerald Tablets, underneath the Sphinx paw, there is a craft that he built about a mile deep. Now, ground penetrating radar discovered an object down there about a mile deep. And there was actually a TV show getting ready to be released, showing that they had discovered something underneath the Sphinx. And the night that it was going to air, I think on Discovery, It got canceled right at the airing time. And when I called my friend from Egypt, who was my main guide and mentor over there, he said that the military and NASA had taken over the site and they had access to that area. There's huge tunnels that go underneath the Giza, and they can get to the Sphinx from underneath one of these tunnels, these openings. And he thinks that they've gone in there and already removed what was ever down there now.
What is the Vatican's role in this?
They're all about the secrecy. They're all about, they're in full collusion with the super elites. And the Vatican is a storehouse of a wealth of information that can really free humanity right at this moment underneath in that Vatican, 5-mile Vatican archive underneath the Vatican. And they take part in collusion also with the Smithsonian and the Vatican. They take part in suppressing, oppressing, deleting, erasing, hiding, obfuscating information that can give humanity the true meaning, the true understanding of our ancient past, where we come from, how super advanced we were, who these Atlantean people really truly were, that they were not from Earth, and that our past is much more colorful and amazing than we thought. But they've been on a complete lifelong mission, generational mission, to keep this information hidden so that we can remain the ants inside of the little ant box, doing all the work for the elites, and let them do what they want to do behind the scenes.
Yeah, I know that, you're a little limited on time, so just let me know when you have to go. But
okay, no problem.
I might just throw out some random questions here just because we're coming toward the end. But what is your take on the Bible Code? I read a couple of the Bible Code books by Michael Drosnin back in the late 90s. Mm-hmm. Is it real, or is it just imaginary?
It's pretty interesting. I mean, I've analyzed it or looked at it. There seem to be a lot of incredible correlations there with historical facts and things. And so I started saying, is it possible that this can just be happenstance, that these alignments can happen, that this information can happen like this on specific pages? Now, the people that wrote the book were the Phoenicians, followers of Thoth. The Bible wasn't written by the people that are in the Bible. So nobody in the Bible wrote anything. Moses wrote nothing. That's an illusion. That's fake news. Judas and all these other people and John and everybody, they wrote nothing. They were illiterate. They couldn't even write if they wanted to. So the Bible was written 100 year AD to 900 AD, long after the people were long and gone and dead. So they couldn't have wrote it unless they resurrected themselves, wrote it, and then died again. So you got people. These people were geniuses who wrote the Bible. They were taking the information from ancient texts, scriptures, cylinder scrolls. The Bible is a hodgepodge of information, from the Enuma Elish, the Atra Hasis, the Code of Hammurabi, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, the Indian Vedas, even some of the Terra paper content is even in there. It's really amazing that it's just a hodgepodge of information taken from all these different other sources and then cut and twisted, even some of the Nag Hammadi, and they've kind of put it in there in a way where they format it in a specific order. Now, there are some Bibles with more information than what we have now. It's called a modern day Bible. The Sinai Bible, for example, has 14,000 differences than what the King James has. And in the Sinai Bible, which predates the King James, a crucifixion never even happened. Never happened. As a matter of fact, they found the Bible, they found the book of Jesus' wife, which is at the seminary in Harvard right now in Boston, in America. So most likely he did get married and have a kid. But it's interesting. I can't really identify whether it's good or true or not. There are a lot of incredible coincidences there that could be the way that they've configured it to release these little tidbits of information.
Right. So people like Jesus and Moses may not have been exactly what we think according to the Bible. I know you did say that Jesus was a real person.
Yeah.
That Jesus did go to India, he did go to Tibet, he did learn these things, and he tried to talk about reincarnation and these things. But you're saying that there was never a crucifixion, right?
No, there was never a crucifixion at all. Matter of fact, the crown of thorns that they're talking about is a archetype of the crown of thorns that we all have inside of our heads right now. Every single human being walking around has 3 giant neurons wrapped around the inside of their skull, and it looks like a crown of thorns on the CAT scan. And so that's what the crown of thorns referencing, because it has to do with higher levels of consciousness. It's called the neural correlates of consciousness, is the name of the neurons. And so that's what it's referencing. And a lot of the things that were talked about are more like riddles and allegories, teaching us like being born again has nothing to do with getting water splashed on your head and getting dumped in a pool of water. Being born again has to do with raising your level of consciousness to the next level. Things like that were taken away to another level and turned into something totally different. He never said he'd come back. He said the Christ will return. And what are we talking about? The Christ consciousness in all people. It's a level of understanding and thinking and unconditional love for one another. That's how the Christ returns. It comes back in every single one of us.
You do believe in reincarnation, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Because I've heard you talk about the universe as being like holographic, and I was first exposed to that knowledge when I read The Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot, which I'm sure you may be familiar with.
Classic book.
Yes, and then I went on to learn about simulation theory.
Okay.
Now, I've heard you talk about simulation theory, so you do believe in simulation theory, and you do believe that our reality could be nested. Or probably
absolutely.
is nested, I should say. Can you just elaborate on that?
Sure, absolutely. Well, and some people, when they hear that we're living in a holographic, universe, they think that we're saying that they're not real. But that has nothing to do with us being real or not real. It has to do with the method of the construction of the universe itself. In other words, we're living in a creation. The Bible's right. The ancient texts are right. The emerald tablets are right. We're living in something that was created. Now, what is the method of creation? The method of creation is a fractal holographic matrix. It's the most effective and efficient way to create a self-propagating universe that can sustain life. So it doesn't mean that we're not real. It just means that we're part of a creation of light. Now, when we go to quantum physics, we realize that everything exists in this entire third dimension is made from light, including the microphone I'm talking into. Every atom in this microphone is made of light. Everything exists as a wave first. Waves are what? Waves are light waves. And so light waves we found through a double slit experiment collapse into what appears to be the illusion of solid matter. So everything that exists in the entire third dimension is made of light, including our bodies. We are light beings. And so once you really understand the fundamental basis behind holography, you go, oh, now I get it now. And then you see as above, so below in Hermetic principles, and you look at a hologram and realize if you take one tiny piece out of a hologram, you see the entire image.
Right.
That's the Hermetic principle. That's as above, so below. And so in that case, we are in this light matrix. We're living in this matrix that is literally made out of light. It's imbued with consciousness. And the consciousness helps collapse the wave function into the illusion of solid matter. Now, we're just one of probably Google's of universes that exist like this. And it's most likely that there's going to be many more. We've already created video games like No Man's Sky that have 80 quadrillion planets in No Man's Sky that fits on a DVD disc. Using the Mandelbrot set equation of fractals, we created an entire universe that has unlimited life forms that never runs out. The game never ends. Now, what if we injected AI technology into that software program and all those beings and animals in there on 80 quadrillion planets became conscious? Same thing with The Sims. The Sims are a video game that are now going to be conscious because they're going to put AI in there and they're going to start asking the questions: who's their god? Where'd the Big Bang come from? Well, that's when we turn the game console on, right? And they're probably going to start working on their own programming code and making their own universe inside of a video game. So eventually you can see that there's layers here, there's nested layers of universes and realities that exist. And I don't think it's going to end anytime soon.
You don't think there would be a bandwidth problem with that?
No, I don't think so. I think that the energy that exists at every point in space-time, called the vector equilibrium, it's housed in the 64-grid tetrahedron inside the flower of life. And so at every point in space-time, at literally every Planck unit, which is the smallest unit you can move over, there is an unlimited amount of power.
Well, if we actually live in, if there are nested realities, is our consciousness all emanating from just one place and we're in these realities? In other words, is there a source where our consciousness returns to kind of like an afterlife?
Yeah, I believe that there's one consciousness. There only exists as one, at least in our third dimension for our universe. I can't speak on other universes, but for ours, I believe there's only one consciousness, and that every single one of us is just being inhabited by a frequency, a slightly different frequency, attuned from that same one consciousness, so that it can experience life as a human, experience life as the atom inside of this microphone, experience life as a blade of grass, experience life as the rock. Or it wants to experience life as every different variation that can exist in the entire third dimension. And I believe that every single emanation of it is transmitting back information on what it's like to be me, you, the rock, the microphone, and everything else for the purpose of data collection. It wants to know what it feels like to be in this third dimension, what this realm is all about, how does it exist, how does it feel. And so it's interacting in a way where it's collecting information, just like our brains collect information to our sensory perception. Our sensory perception could be considered to be people on different planets, and it's collecting data as we go out and touch things and feel things and see and smell things. It sends it back to the consciousness, which is the brain for us, and then the brain sorts it all out and go, oh, okay, that's what's happening out there. I think the same thing is happening with the universal consciousness. And so I think we're all literally all one. I think that I think consciousness also steps down through the different dimensions. I believe there's 11 dimensions in this universe, and I think it inhabits all 11 down to the third. When it gets to us, we're getting a delay. This is why there's up to a 7-second delay in us observing or being aware of reality. We notice through scientific experiments that the human brain is taking about 7 seconds for us to realize what moment we're actually in. So by the time the moment actually happens, it's already gone in another part of space-time, and we're just experiencing it with a very delayed response.
What do you think of the law of one?
Oh, the law of one's amazing. I have the whole volume. I think I have I have the 5-volume set up here on my shelf. Pretty interesting. I got the one book first, and I was, it's channeled material. And so it was my first time reading channeled information. I wanted to just see, because I heard it was very scientific. And I was like, if this is really channeled information, this is really close to like real physics, real quantum physics here. Like, how do they pull this out of the sky? You know what I'm saying? Out of space-time. And so I became intrigued. The more and more I became intrigued with it, I said, I got to get more information. So I got the whole 5-volume set. It's pretty interesting. Now, through my more deeper study into physics, I said, let me find out, can information really be pulled down from space-time? And then I realized that every single brain is creating an electromagnetic wave that's leaving the skull and going into space-time right now. Every thought you think. And it's leaving encoded with data. So whatever thought you have at this moment is already left. So the book of life is real. The Akashic records is the other way of saying it, is real, because every entity that has any conscious thought at all, they've sent the light wave into space-time with data encoded on it. If you match that right frequency, you can quantum entangle with somebody else's idea, and you can download it into your brain, and then you can actually act on it and utilize it. So a lot of the times I believe that even we don't have original ideas. I think a lot of the times we're just downloading information.
I've heard you also describe yourself as kind of a man out of time when you were a young child. You told your mother that.
Yeah.
And the law of one talks about wanderers. These are people that maybe have not had many incarnations on Earth. You're from another star system, reincarnated here. Do you feel that way about yourself?
I'll be honest, I don't talk about it often, but I kind of do. I told my mother, this is, I think I was 7. I told her I feel like I don't even belong here. It's just a weird knowing that you have. And I've always been a futuristic thinker. I always seem to understand and know a lot of things that are going to happen before they happen. And I'm not saying it's magical or anything like that. I'm just saying it feels like I'm from another place. And when I watch some of the sci-fi movies, I always feel a direct link to not the battles and things that they have, but to some of the tech and some of the abilities that some of these, vessels that they're flying on, and the capability of going places. And it just feel like I was a part of that at some point in the ancient past, in the distant past, or maybe it was the future, because you can incarnate from the future or the past. You can incarnate from the present, the past, the future, because time, everything happens all at once. So I don't know what it is, but I just feel such a strong link to it, as if I was a part of that in some way, shape, or form at some time, somewhere. And I just feel like it's in some weird kind of way, it's part of me. And when I was younger, I used to actually feel like I got abandoned on this planet, to be honest with you, is what I would say.
Wow. Maybe just a couple more questions. I'm curious to know your take on time travel, because I've been pondering it. And can we travel back to the past? Can we travel to the future? Is it possible? Does the U.S. government or the secret governments have this technology? What's going on with it?
Travel to the past and the future is definitely possible. Now, travel to the future we know is extremely possible because we do it all the time. Matter of fact, when Jeff Bezos got in a rocket ship today and went up into space, he traveled to the future. Only by a few microseconds, but still a calculable amount of time. You can calculate that amount of time that he went into the future, because objects moving away at a specific speed create moving time into the future. Now, as you approach a percentage of the speed of light, you can end up moving into the past, which just gets really weird and complicated. But time travel into the past can also be created by creating a vortex of light that's moving in reverse counterclockwise, and you can go down that vortex and you can exit it back in a past time. The problem with it is it'll be easier to send information back that way, but who are you sending it to? Because now I understand the grandfather paradox in a way that probably nobody has ever looked at it before. So in the grandfather paradox, when you travel back in time, if you meet up with your grandfather and kill him, you shouldn't have been able to be born to travel back in time in the first place, right? So I started analyzing that, and I realized that when you travel back in time, you shift your subatomic frequency. It shifts because of the propagation through the time wave. And so you end up on a timeline that's not yours. So you go back in time on a parallel universe is where you exit. And so you can kill your grandfather and still have gone back in time because that's not your grandfather on your own timeline. When you go into the future, though, you stay on your same timeline. It's pretty interesting stuff.
Is that similar to the Back to the Future scenario where it breaks off the two tangents and he's on a different timeline? Is it something like that?
It's very possible, yeah. Yeah, okay. I mean, I didn't see it, but yeah.
No, I appreciate all your insight. Do people, do they often refer to you as being Morpheus?
Yeah, they, I usually have my glasses. I wear glasses a lot. People, why are you always wearing shades? I wear shades because I have a condition called synesthesia. And so my audio and visual cortex are merged, and so sound, when I hear sounds, I actually can see sounds, and sounds generate colors and numbers in my eyes, and I can feel colors. So it's it can be irritating, especially when you're young and you don't know what's going on. But as I got older, but I wear shades a lot because it dims some of the input, and also people don't see my eyes looking around crazy sometimes when I hear strange noises and things like that. It distracts me and things. So I have the shades on to keep my, keep myself calmer, keep my eyes from people looking at me like, this guy must be, why is he who's looking at? What is he doing? And so, but I'm not the only one. A lot of people, Mary J. Blige, Billy Joel, a lot of artists, I do music. Kanye West has synesthesia. There's quite a few people out there that have it. 1 in 100,000 people actually have this condition, were born with it.
Oh, interesting. But the last thing that I'll mention, because I know you have to go soon, is, you talked about in one of your interviews where you could be having a conversation with people, and they could be open, normal conversation. You mentioned 9/11. You mentioned some of these conspiracies, and they kind of close up, and they try to change the subject. Yeah. And you said it was an Agent Smith effect. Can you kind of describe it? Because I've experienced that too, where people just completely shut down.
Oh yeah. You have the Agent Smith effect. Agent Smith from the Matrix movie. And so basically, in the Matrix movie, you have Agent Smith. He has the capability of jumping into the avatar bodies of some of these people that are in the Matrix. So when Neo's in the Matrix itself, he's not on the outside, but he's actually in there. Anybody next to him who looks like a normal person could be Agent Smith, because he can actually inhabit their bodies. And then, of course, he's going to overwrite their programming. So if you're out talking to a friend and you're hanging out and you guys are talking about what happened on TV or an NBA game or something like that, but if you in the middle of the conversation start talking about 9/11 or being a potential conspiracy, or you start talking about other things that could be conspiratorial or go against the normal mainstream grain, what could happen is that person will then change, their countenance will change, their posture will change. It's like Agent Smith from the program from the Matrix has literally entered their body now and is getting them to try to shut you down. I don't want to hear about that. That's a bunch of garbage, blah, blah, blah. Trying to change the subject, because that is what happens in the Matrix. And so what you find is that the people on this planet are the prisoners, and we're also the prison guards. And it's an interesting way that they've got the system set up to where we actually prison guard our own selves.
I hate to have lied, but I got to ask you one more thing. Last thing. Excuse me. Is flat Earth a psyop? What is your opinion on that?
Yeah, it's a psyop, man, and I've been attacked for this so many times. They've come and attacked my account. Anytime that somebody goes, as calmly as I am and as nicely as I am talking about it, when people become dangerous, when I get life threats on my life, which are on my legal forbidden knowledge account, you can see the life threats against my life that have been screenshot and put up there. When they start attacking your followers, when they threaten to kill your children, and all these kind of things, you have to start questioning to yourself, what kind of agenda do these people really have? When you say that you don't believe in it, and when they asked me to promote it and I told them no, and they offered me $50,000 to promote the flat earth, and I told them no, this is about 5 years ago or whatever. Yeah, people have to understand that, first of all, the majority of the people that are following it are looking at YouTube for their base source of knowledge. And that's not a good place to look. Now, can you learn things on YouTube? Yes, you can. But at the same time, you have to discern information that's real and that's fake, because it's a video platform that anybody can upload any video to. And if I got over here and I, got my telescope out and I got some measuring tools out, I can talk all kind of fanciful talk to you that's going to make it sound so intelligent. It's going to make you believe something, whatever it is I want you to believe. Well, unfortunately, because people haven't been that studious in school, and don't understand general physics. I'm not even talking quantum physics. I'm talking general physics, basic physics, large-scale physics. Because they never studied it, because they didn't learn it, because they weren't studious, and because they'll never go and really truly research it for themselves and maybe even do their own experiments with it, they will go and ride off the backs and tails of people that had already come out and made these pseudoscientific claims. It was introduced into the mainstream to see which, to be honest with you, truthfully, to see which race would grasp onto it the hardest. And unfortunately, it's the black race. The black race has grabbed onto it the hardest. There's more blacks involved in believing the earth is flat than any other race. And they've ran away with it and literally turned it into a religion. And that's really unfortunate, but it is what it is.
Wow. I'm sure we can talk for hours more, but I know you have to go. So I just wanted to just say, if you want to just tell my audience wherever they could find you, your books. I know we didn't even get into the whole, the Emerald Tablets of Thought. Yeah. I know you have the book Compendium of the Emerald Tablets, and you can find that on Amazon. But
right.
Go ahead and tell my audience whatever you want.
Yeah, well, I have a bestseller here, Compendium of the Emerald Tablets. It's been a bestseller now for 30 months straight on Amazon. You can also go to forbiddenknowledge.com. My other bestseller is Woke Doesn't Mean Broke. It's a book on financial literacy, combining spiritual practices with how to understand it and how to navigate the financial matrix. And that's also on forbiddenknowledge.com or amazon.com. And also you can go to Forbidden Knowledge TV. So I have my own TV platform. It's on Amazon, Roku, Fire TV, Amazon, Fire TV, Amazon Prime, and was one more, iOS and Android apps and a website. So forbiddenknowledge.tv as well. There's over 5,200 shows up there right now. Amazing, great content, new stuff getting added all the time. And I just relaunched my Forbidden Knowledge podcast as well. So you can go on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and everywhere else. And of course, my YouTube channel, Forbidden Knowledge, and follow me there.